Good afternoon, and thank you for joining us on this spooky day. Our webinar today, cybersecurity doesn't have to be scary and guarding against bad luck with these best practices. I'm Becky Lyon on Ray's marketing team, and I will be moderating today's presentation. Before we get started, just a few housekeeping items to cover. You will find that there are copies of today's presentation under the handout section along the right. In addition to that, we will also be taking questions at the end of the presentation. We will do our best to answer as many questions as we can, but we will be considerate of your time. And if we run close to that 1 o'clock hour, we will have our guys answer all the questions afterwards and get them sent to you. In addition, you will receive a copy of these slides and the recording after this event. And then I'm going to go right into our presenters, are Travis, Steve, and Neil, all part of our Ray's Information Savers team, and they combined have over 50 years of experience in the world of IT and cybersecurity. And with it being Cybersecurity Awareness Month, during this presentation, they'll equip you with the knowledge and tools to enhance your technology and safeguard your business. Welcome, guys.
Hey, thanks, Becky. Am I coming through okay?
Yep.
Awesome. Well, good afternoon, everyone, and thank you to all of you for joining today's webinar. I imagine that most, if not all of you, joined this webinar hopefully to get some kind of value out of it, and we're hopeful that each of you will be able to walk away from this with a couple takeaways, maybe a couple key takeaways, to help either move you personally or your business in a positive direction from an information security standpoint. October is Cybersecurity Awareness Month, and our plan is to provide you with tips and insights on how to do just that, how to help move all of us in a positive direction from an information security standpoint. Quite honestly, I don't think there is anything too earth-shattering or surprising in what we bring to you today, but we do want to level set on what we're seeing from a cyber standpoint with our clients and our partners and all of you, and just how all of us play a vital role in securing our world. One of the things I wanted to mention up front as well is we were trying to get cameras enabled for this session, and we're having some technical difficulties on that. So we wanted to show our faces and all that, but we're just going to go with voices today. From an agenda standpoint, what we wanted to walk through, I'll give a brief slide here in a minute just on introductions, so who we are. Talk a little bit about Cybersecurity Awareness Month. What is it and why are we focused on it? Spend a few minutes also talking about cybersecurity, just definition-wise, making sure we're all level set on what is cybersecurity, and talk about the threat landscape associated with that. We'd be remiss if we didn't spend a few minutes talking about fundamental cybersecurity elements and controls that should be in place, and some other things to be mindful of when it comes to this topic. So we'll be spending quite a bit of time on those two bulleted items around fundamentals and other things to be mindful of. We're probably going to share quite a few resources throughout the presentation, and the last slide there around resources will kind of encapsulate just a few different resources that you can use as takeaways for yourselves to grab a hold of and utilize them to the extent you need to. We will be taking questions throughout the presentation, but if you want to save them to the end, I'm hopeful that we'll have 10 to 15 minutes toward the end of this presentation to answer any questions anybody has. All right, so let's move forward here. So I am Travis Strong. I'm a senior manager within Ray Information Services. You can see my email address there if anybody wants to reach out and connect. I'm also on LinkedIn. You can look me up on LinkedIn as well. And maybe just go around real briefly, Neil and Steve, maybe just 1 or 2 minutes, just or even shorter than that if you could, just give a brief intro of yourselves here in a second. But so Travis Strong, I've been with Ray for a little over a year, but my background has been in risk management. So I've spent some time in internal audit, IT risk management, and a lot of my career has been focused on cybersecurity. You'll see another name on this slide, Jeff Rapp. Jeff Rapp is over Array Information Services. So Neil, Steve, and myself all work for Jeff in Array Information Services. Jeff will be available towards the end for Q&A as well. So Neil, if you don't mind, maybe 30 seconds on a brief intro.
Sure. Hello, everyone, and thank you all for attending. I'm excited to be joining this conversation here today alongside team members and panelists, Travis Strong, Steve Naughton, and Jeff. So a little bit about myself. My name is Neil Coer. I'm a senior cyber consultant here at Ray & Associates. I have over a decade of experience working within the field of cybersecurity and currently hold the designation of CISSP, or Certified Information Security Professional. This is experience that includes working close to a decade with financial institutions to ensure their digital security and compliance needs are met. And in addition to this, over the past few years, I've had the pleasure of working within the realm of managed information security services. This is serving a plethora of industries, each with their own specific set of needs. And this experience has really helped to broaden my perspective and deepen my understanding of the cybersecurity challenges faced by most organizations here today.
Awesome, Neil. How about you, Steve?
Hey, thanks, Travis, and thank you, Neil, for your background as well. Equally excited to be a part of this presentation today as a panelist. So Steve Naughton here. I've been with Ray & Associates for almost a year now as a cybersecurity consultant. Prior to joining the firm, I managed and maintained small businesses of my own. And then before that, I served just about a decade in government service between the United States Air Force and the U.S. Secret Service as a federal investigator and protection investigator for Secret Service. So a lot of my cyber experience comes from being attached to the Cyber Crimes Task Force out of New York City and Connecticut. And we did a lot of cyber fraud, identity theft, anti-terrorism, money laundering, and things of that nature. So all the really cool stuff. But don't worry, I wasn't involved in anything cool. So, yeah, happy to be a part of the presentation today, and very happy to share valuable information with our customers, clients, and community to help them be a little bit more cyber secure as we make it in the forefront of our mind for Cybersecurity Awareness Month.
Awesome, thanks, Steve and Neil. And personally, I'd like for this webinar to be actually in more of a podcast format. So if either of you guys have something to chime in on at any point, feel free to do so. All right, so let's get into it here. Just maybe a little bit about Ray & Associates and Ray Information Services. So this is content that's out on our website for Ray & Associates, but the guys here leading the webinar really play in this space here that's in that purple box for Ray Information Services. So we focus on managed IT and then cybersecurity and data protection. So that's where we play from a Ray & Associates standpoint. But you can see on here the variety of services that Ray & Associates offers to our clients. So a little bit more about Ray Information Services and our core focus. Our purpose is it's to cultivate lifelong relationships. So that's what we get passionate out of with our team and our clients, and really try hard to simplify the complex. And part of that is providing sustainable, secure, and simplified business solutions using a human-centric approach. And I wanted to hit on that here because a big part of Cybersecurity Awareness Month is that human-centric approach. I say quite often that the human, the end user, is really the new firewall for cybersecurity. So making sure that we're equipping people to be able to detect, well, hopefully prevent, but in the end, it's detect and report anything suspicious or unusual that's seen from a cybersecurity standpoint. So making sure people are trained is a big passion of ours. Making sure we use this human-centric approach is really important from our perspective. Just a few of our services listed here from Array Information Services standpoint. I mentioned we do managed IT, managed security services. We do risk assessments, penetration testing, those sorts of things, and also some consulting services and advisory services. So wanted to just make sure to level set with you all on who we are. I know likely several of you know who we are already, but just wanted to level set here. So let's talk about Cybersecurity Awareness Month here real briefly. I'm going to run through this slide pretty quickly, but what it is. So there's a couple different organizations out there. So there's a Cybersecurity Alliance. It's mentioned kind of in that second box there, right? The Department of Homeland Security's Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Agency, so the CISA, and the National Cybersecurity Alliance. They've partnered together as part of Cybersecurity Awareness Month to create resources and communications for all of us, you know, to use to talk to our employees or our partners just about staying safe in this digital world. 2023, this year, marks the 20th Cybersecurity Awareness Month. And the month reminds everyone, like it says at that on the bottom of the slide, that there are all kinds of ways to keep your data protected. We're going to talk about those, talk about a lot of these here in this presentation today. But all of these go a long way in making a huge difference. You know, just practicing the basics, they just go a long way, and we'll talk about that here in a minute. All right, let's level set here. So what is cybersecurity again? I'm going to talk about it kind of in two ways. So what is cybersecurity, and what is the threat landscape that's out there? So what is cybersecurity? At a very high level, it's the practice of protecting computer systems, networks, devices, and data from unauthorized access, attacks, damage, or theft. That's a lot. It may just be one sentence on a slide, but there's a lot that goes into that. And you can't really think of cybersecurity in and of itself. There's a broader ecosystem around it. But essentially, that's what it is. It's protecting computer systems, networks, devices, and data from unauthorized access, attacks, damage, and theft. In the security space, probably a lot of you have heard this message before, but in the security space, we spend an inordinate amount of our time focusing on these three areas, what's called the CIA triad. CIA is confidentiality, integrity, and availability. What do we mean by confidentiality? Those are literally measures to prevent unauthorized access to sensitive information. All of us have sensitive information, and confidentiality plays a huge role in the security aspect of making sure that we're preventing unauthorized access to that confidential information. Integrity. These are all measures to maintain the accuracy and trustworthiness of data and systems. If any of you are running a business, managing part of a business, or whatever the case might be, I imagine that every day you want to make sure that you're operating with complete and accurate information, and that you've got trustworthy information so that you can make your key business decisions. Security plays a role in integrity, and hopefully that resonates with you. How about availability? I also imagine that if you're a business owner, or if you're leading a part of a business or something like that, you want to make sure you have the information you need when you need it to make those business decisions. And that's what availability is all about. It's measures to ensure that digital resources are available when they're needed. So that's how we think about cybersecurity at a high level, kind of on one page. We're going to do a poll here and want to ask the audience, what are you most concerned with from a cybersecurity standpoint? And if we did this right, you should be able to choose 3 options. And we'll give that maybe 30 seconds or so to run through.
That's good. Yep, we're getting quite a few votes now.
Organizers and panelists don't vote. That's unfair.
Yeah, that's not fair.
I want
You
to
guys know
vote.
the answers.
The caveat to this poll is I actually wanted about 30 options. So, and I had to consolidate it down to I think Becky said 6. So what you see on the screen there is not an exhaustive list of concerns, but there is that catch-all I think at the bottom, like I don't know what it said, other or something like that.
Yeah, I'm gonna go ahead and close this, and then you guys will be able to see the results. You should be seeing them now.
Well, a lot of people trust their employees. That's a good thing.
I'm
All right.
unfortunately not able to see the results. If I don't know if Steve or Neil, if you guys want to talk about anything on there.
Yeah, sure thing. So we have phishing and social engineering and ransomware, malware, and virus coming in at a tie at 74%. Identity or business data theft is at a high 76%. So that's actually our first one. And then tech vulnerabilities at 19 and insider threat at 7%.
Interesting stuff. Yeah, I think we'll hit on all those as we move throughout the slides here in more
Certainly.
detail.
It's back on your slide now, Travis.
Perfect. All right, well, maybe digging in, I guess, on just a few of those. So, you know, if you're in the cybersecurity space like we are, we spend a lot of time making sure that we understand what the threat landscape is from a cybersecurity standpoint. And I'll be honest with you, like if you go and Google what are the key cyber threats today, you'll probably get thousands of different perspectives and answers on that. And just because of that, you know what I did is I used ChatGPT and asked ChatGPT what is the current cyber threat landscape, and it helped me with this slide a little bit because it kind of aggregated a lot of various data points together. And I'm going to walk through these here briefly, and then we'll move on to some other topics here. But so what is the threat landscape? Ransomware attacks. We just asked about that on the poll that we just asked the audience. From a concern standpoint, these are still an active threat and can be very disruptive to our lives and to production. Can result in losses as well. So we're that's a current real-time threat that's out there. Supply chain attacks. You got to think about, and we've got a specific slide around this later in the deck as well. And we're going to talk about just what the supply chain means to us, because we're not in this by ourselves. We're kind of in this, and we're only as strong as, you know, the weakest link in our supply chain. We'll talk about that here shortly in a little bit to some extent as well. Espionage attacks, you know, where either competitors or foreign countries are trying to impact our competitive advantage. It's just an interesting world we live in, and I've got some more information to share on that here in a minute. Internet of Things, and all of the things that are attached to the internet now that have an IP address that are susceptible to vulnerabilities, to bad actors getting a hold of those and disrupting operations, still a very key threat that's out there. Phishing and social engineering attacks, they have not slowed down. In fact, they have significantly increased over the recent years, especially as it relates to some of just the conflicts going on around the world, or activism, or what have you. Zero-day vulnerabilities, we see a lot of these now where vendors will, their products will have vulnerabilities that are disclosed publicly, but yet they don't have a patch for them. And the bad actors, the threat actors, use those zero-day vulnerabilities, is what they're called. They'll use those vulnerabilities to really get a foothold in organization to perform just targeted attacks on certain vulnerabilities. There's a term in cybersecurity called advanced persistent threats. So these are organized groups that spend a lot of time conducting very sophisticated attacks on companies, individuals, government agencies, what have you. That's a real threat that's out there right now. There's I call it a threat, but may not resonate from a threat standpoint, but regulatory and compliance challenges, they add complexity, right? Everybody wants to make sure we're doing the right thing. Emerging technology is a big one right now. If we're not out in front of and being proactive with emerging technology, it could create new risks, and we just have to make sure we're proactively addressing those. Nation state attacks, critical infrastructure, and just on businesses in general and people in general. They just impact our national security. Insider threats, that was a poll, that was one of the options on the poll. That's still a relevant threat that's out there. We definitely want to make sure we trust our people internally, but I've seen time and time again where insiders actually do the wrong things, either maliciously or accidentally, and those lead to other issues. And then third-party weaknesses, kind of related to supply chain, but a little bit different too, but third-party weaknesses can be exploited and could impact you or your business. So let's talk about fundamentals. And Neil, I'm going to hand it over to you.
All right, thank you, Travis. So to get things kicked off here with fundamentals, let's go ahead and run through another poll. So what is the strongest password from the list? We'd like to see your answers there to kind of get an idea of where we're at.
We kind of
Nice.
helped a little bit here, Neil, right? Like hopefully nobody's picking the first one, but we'll see.
Yeah, there's a few jabs in there.
All right, we'll give everyone just a couple more seconds.
If anybody's password is on this list also, please go change it.
I will do that after this right away.
Oh, Becky, you just told on yourself.
All right, I'll go ahead and close it. Then our number one answer by 93% was correct, space, force with the 0, space, battery with the @ space, pickup, space, Walmart. We did have some Friday the 13th guests, and I love to golf 3, but I'm sure those guys were just being silly.
Did anybody pick password 1, 2, 3? Other than you, Becky, you told on yourself.
I tried, but it said organization and panelists cannot participate.
All right. The slide's back over to you, Travis.
What's interesting about those results, Neil? Like, do you see any?
Well, I think for the most part, people are leaning towards looking at the correct answer there. You know, we're looking at password length. We're looking at the complexity piece of that as well, with having a combination of uppercase, lowercase, numeric, and symbols in the password. So that's definitely good to see, which indicates that there's probably some good baseline information about passwords already out there with the group. So with that, I think we'll be able to hit the ground running with these fundamentals. And actually, the first item on the list there is the use of strong passwords and a password manager as a recommendation. So getting into it, I mean, there can be some debate about what is a strong password. By and large, generally speaking, being system agnostic for the most part. Usually we're looking for at least 12 to 16 characters in length for a good, long, strong password when we're talking about length. And of course, longer passwords are generally going to be more secure for us. Another item there is going to be that complexity piece that we noted. So just making sure you have a mix of different characters, uppercase and lowercase letters, numbers, and special symbols. And something that a lot of us can get in trouble with is we come up with this long password, great complexity, the whole 9 yards, but then we end up reusing this password over and over again. So looking at unpredictability and uniqueness there. So a strong password should be one that's not easily guessable. So we don't want to see complexity, but with, you know, summer 2023 or months of the year, or, you know, just something that's kind of repetitive and has a pattern. So that way, if let's say there was a breach in the past and somebody picked up your password, they wouldn't be able to make an educated guess of what it likely is today if it were changed. And variety there, just making sure it's not a simple variation of any of your previous passwords. And then kind of butting up against that then is discussion about a password manager tool. So on average, many people are estimated to have right around between 10 to 30 different passwords or more, between personal bank accounts, for whatever work needs they have, you know, whether it's your streaming media password, online banking, your work computer, personal computer, and everything in between. There's quite a few passwords today that we have to keep track of. So this then poses a question of, well, how do I effectively manage the implementation of a strong password? Something that's unpredictable, unique, and provides enough variation so they can't be guessed. And that solution is a password manager utility, which can automatically generate, securely save, and automatically fill in those passwords for most, if not all, of your accounts. And the benefits here is this reduces the burden of memorizing numerous passwords effectively down to one unique master password, which you would use to unlock your secure password manager vault with then. The next item here is turn on multi-factor authentication. I know it's Friday the 13th, and there can be a lot of scary things here, and this is one of those items. I can't stress this one enough. Multi-factor, or MFA, is a security method used to confirm a user's identity by requiring them to provide multiple forms of verification. So as an example, when you access your internet banking account, typically you're going to be asked for your username and your password and some third form of verification. And this will usually consist of a one-time passcode, something that's received on either an MFA app on your mobile device or through text message or some other form that you enter in along with your password. And this code is something that updates every 30 to 60 seconds or so. So that way it's nothing that can effectively be memorized. So if this option is discretionary and available to you, I would definitely recommend turning it on yesterday. In the event that your password is compromised and a threat actor attempts to sign on to your account using your username and password, and I've seen this many times, where the only thing that would have prevented them from getting into a sensitive system, whether it's email or some other sensitive cloud portal access, and gaining access to the crown jewels, your data, was this implementation of MFA. The third item here, recognize and report phishing and other suspicious behavior. So looking through that first poll we went through, definitely a lot of those higher voted items all kind of revolve around phishing, social engineering, those types of attacks. So the absolute #1 avenue threat actors are taking to gain access to your sensitive data today is not through that often stereotypical hacking scenario that everyone typically thinks about. Most, if not all, data breaches today, or I would say most of them, occur as the result of some form of successful phishing campaign. Typically, this results in clicking on the unassuming Word document or a link in an email, resulting in some type of successful malware injection if endpoint protection is not adequate or non-existent in some cases. Some other scenarios include, but are not limited to, user credential compromise by going out to a fake sign-on page and providing your credentials, as well as other forms of social engineering, if they're able to successfully hook you and reel you in. So what should you do if you recognize an email as being suspicious? Always, always, always err on the side of caution. So for instance, if it appears that you have a suspicious communication coming in from your credit card company or bank, do not click on the links or attachments within the email. In this case, you can and should take an independent route to get in contact with the merchant to verify the communication. So don't rely on looking up that phone number that's embedded in the email. Go out independently to your bank's site, look for their contact information there independently, and call them directly that way. And with this, I mean, ultimately the question posed should never be if, but when I fall for a phishing email, what should I do? So if you're in an organization and they don't already have some type of prescribed measures in place to follow, such as an incident response plan, the practical response, if you have an IT department or someone who manages your IT, is to contact them immediately. So the clock is effectively ticking once the link has been clicked and the credentials have been provided, or the file has been downloaded and auto-installed. So in addition, letting your IT department know that there's a suspicious email out there, even if you didn't click on it, can also provide them some time to get ahead of this potential incident and take measures to reduce the likelihood of others in the organization from falling for the same phishing campaign as well.
Hey, Neil, and I think on this, could I just jump in here? I mean, what we're saying
Yeah,
too is email still is a very high on the list, if not top of the list, way that threat actors are getting footholds, either in personal email accounts or in business email accounts. And
it
yeah, just
it
that
absolutely
reporting,
is.
yeah, the reporting and suspicious behavior piece. Like I like to tell people, so don't just think about your own situation, um, because if you don't report it and if you don't bring it up, if you don't mention it to IT or whatever, uh, potentially IT could be blindsided a little bit, not know that something bad is going on if the behavior isn't reported. So just want to emphasize that point that Neil's bringing up here around this topic, and it also leads to some of the other things on this slide.
Yeah, it's always, if at all possible, it's always good to be able to get ahead of these items before they actually turn into incidents. And yeah, one of the reasons for this, the prevalence of it, is there's so little overhead and time investment for a hacker or a threat actor to take by simply sending out an email rather than spending days, weeks, and months trying to infiltrate a system through other means. So the next item here on the list is keep your software and hardware updated. So this seems basic enough. One of the most effective ways really to make your systems less vulnerable to attack, including your Internet of Things devices, is simply just to keep your software and hardware updated. There are a significant number of zero-day attacks that effectively target older versions of software and firmware, whereas if things are kept up to date, that's less likely going to be the case. It just simply helps to reduce that risk overall. And then on top of that, please just let that Windows update finish as you see it starting and working in the background, even though it's slowing down your machine. Typically this is happening towards the end of the day when we're kind of in a rush to get out the door. But go ahead and make sure that Windows update is allowed to finish. And if you have to restart the device to apply the update, please do so as soon as you're able to. And that can definitely be helpful for you. If you have an IT department, they'll definitely be appreciative of that as well. 5 on the list, avoid social engineering tactics. So carrying over from phishing, there are some other forms of social engineering to be aware of. This form of attack simply relies on manipulating human psychology, trust, and curiosity. Some examples of social engineering include pretexting, which is simply creating a fabricated scenario to obtain information from a target. And oftentimes this is done by impersonating someone in authority to gain a means to an end. So maybe it's the end of the day and you get a message coming through. It looks like it's coming from your boss and they say, hey, I need you to take care of A, B, and C ASAP. I'm going to be unavailable for the next hour. I would say in that case, don't be afraid to reach out through an alternate means back to that individual if it doesn't seem like it's within scope of what they typically request there. So anything that kind of seems out of character, I would definitely recommend verifying. Another social engineering tactic that runs prevalent is baiting. So this typically occurs as a form of enticement, such as dropping a flash drive or other removable media device in a parking lot, on a sidewalk, etc. And then the unsuspecting target, they'll pick up the device and plug it into their computer to see what's on it. And unbeknownst to them, by doing so, they've effectively installed the malicious payload onto their system. Tailgating is another one. So in this scenario, a threat actor will physically follow a person to a restricted area to gain access. And this can happen in a number of ways, if you can imagine. One example would be simply holding a door open to a restricted area for someone that has their hands full. Shoulder surfing, or someone looking over your shoulder to view sensitive data, password entry, etc. So I guess the takeaway here is just be mindful of the potential of a threat actor taking advantage of all of our desire to be helpful. So just keeping these things in mind.
Yeah,
Neil,
Neil, I think just to wind, I'm sorry, Steve, go ahead.
oh, that's okay. No, I was going to say that that kind of goes into the protect devices with adequate antivirus and your privacy settings as well, because all of those can be affected by that removable media piece. You know what I mean? So as long as those items are properly addressed, you know, you can kind of create that layered security approach, you know, with those pieces on there as well.
Yeah,
Yes,
Neil, I think too,
definitely.
just on these fundamentals, right? Just leading into the right, I blew the slide out for you. Just the fundamentals help, right?
Yes, yes, they definitely do. It's a great stepping stone, getting those down. And then I do recommend, you know, if any of you in the audience are working with an organization in management or you're an employee, just making that recommendation to provide some type of basic fundamental information security training, and providing that program out to all of the employees, anybody that would have access to a computer. Yeah, definitely some good content can be provided there. So with looking at the next one here, with removable media, this can be taken one of two ways. So we have our baiting scenario with removable media found in the parking lot from our previous point. However, the other side of this coin is looking at protecting your data. I mean, inherently, removable media is designed to be portable. So we transfer the data from our computers onto the device, place it in our pocket, briefcase, or backpack, and away we go. Before you place that data on a flash drive, please be mindful of what data it is that you're actually placing on that drive. Ask yourself, is it sensitive? Information such as financial records, health reports, or even in some cases, family photos. You'll want to ensure that your removable media is adequately protected. So this will typically consist of some form of encryption and the use of a strong password. And I emphasize strong again here. Something that can't be memorized, and I do harp on not written down, and something that also could be stored within your secure password manager. So I always run through this exercise with removable media for myself. If I wouldn't be comfortable leaving the removable media with its data in Grand Central Station for fear of that data being compromised, I'm not adequately protecting it for general everyday use. That's typically the way I view removable media, even mobile devices. So that would also include your phone and even your laptops.
Hey,
Next
Neil,
one
and
on the list
also,
here. Yeah,
I'm sorry, I did put at the bottom here for the audience just a couple sources that folks can go to. They can dig into any of these boxes by going to either one of these sources at the bottom. I think the takeaway though with everything on this slide is on the right side, right, with just the fundamentals. These are the fundamentals, and what we're going to talk about next is getting into some other things that folks should be mindful of. And I want to hit on that right side if we could, Neil, just around, you know, there's folks that can help with any of the stuff on the left. So just making sure that folks know that, you know, shouldering that burden of managing cybersecurity risk, it's not an easy task. And if you need help, reach out to IT or cybersecurity partners to help with that. And I think what I'd like to move into, Neil, if it's all right, could we move into the next set of content just around other things to be mindful of? Are you good with that?
sure. And then
All right.
if anybody has any questions on this list that we didn't cover yet or any that we did, please feel free to place those questions into the chat, and we can either get to them today or follow up with you at a later time then as well.
That's perfect. Awesome. Let's move on to other things to be mindful of here. And I'm going to advance the content, Steve. I kick it over to you. Tell us some other things that we should be thinking about.
Yeah, sure thing. So when you're looking at, you know, we've already described what the cyber landscape looks like. But kind of look at this as an approach of how you would do any kind of risk that you're taking with getting into your car, buying a home, going out, into an area maybe that looks a little sketchy. You always do that general risk assessment. Okay, I'm gonna, analyze what my risks are with this environment. And an information security risk assessment, which can be deployed inside of a cyber environment, would be a wonderful component in helping whether yourself or your organization identify your acceptable, known, and unknown cybersecurity risks. So a lot of times we hear this, okay, well, how do I know what I don't know? And that is where a third party can come in. For instance, an information security risk assessment is something that Ray Information Services provides. And if you do have a third party doing a risk assessment, or at least a thorough risk assessment, either within, doesn't matter if you're a small organization or even a large organization, it can bring to light how you prioritize your cyber threats, what the risk acceptance is inside your organization, and how the leadership accepts that risk and puts things into place that allow them to operate safely. This can also be used as a third-party risk assessment compliance tool, whether there is insurance compliance related requirements or maybe even banking requirements in place. So in a perfect world, this type of product will give you tactical, operational, and strategic tools to make your organization safe and effective from a cybersecurity standpoint. Now, inherently, there are going to be some cyber risks, as with any type of risk assessment, that you're going to have those acceptable levels of risk. But that's where an organization like Ray and Associates can come in and provide that expert guidance and input to help keep you safe and keep your business and keep yourself safe and running on the ground. Go ahead, hit the next slide for me, Travis. So 3 big things that we can talk about here: emerging technologies and trends, cybersecurity misconfigurations, and solid partnerships that we encourage. So emerging technologies and trends, we're not going to exhaust all of these lists, but these are all things that we're hearing, with our friends and family: artificial intelligence, cybersecurity, business resiliency, and continuity. All of these buzzwords essentially mean, do you have something in place that allows you to not only gain the education on it, but then also bounce it off a third party to ensure that you're doing everything correctly? So when we think of cloud computing, we don't necessarily think, or typically we go straight to, okay, well, I have a cloud computing software that I use, maybe a software as a service, or the Internet of Things services that I have. But delve down even further and make it personal. When you're doing your banking online on your phone, that is considered a type of cloud computing. So you want to make sure that not only are you staying safe from a personal standpoint, but you also move those into your business practices as well, and vice versa. Another big thing that we like to talk about is network segmentation. So think of this as multiple layers to the castle. Who has keys to what doors? That is increasingly important inside of an organization that has multiple users and maybe multiple departments, where you do not want certain line level employees to have access to sensitive data, because sometimes those lower level employees, they do have full unvetted access throughout your network, and they become compromised. Again, just like how I said with the think of the crown jewels, the castle scenario. You don't want the guy who's protecting the moat to have access to the princess. That doesn't make any sense, right? So we want to make sure that we have those protections in place and multiple layers of security to ensure that you're good to go and keep your business or yourself up and running. Go ahead, hit a slide for me, Travis. So these are those 10 cybersecurity misconfigurations that we touched on. And again, we don't have to exhaust this whole list, but I'm going to call out a few of those. The network segmentation, you see that come up twice here, but the lack of network segmentation is a big one that we've seen recently. Neil touched on the weak or misconfigured MFA policies inside the organization, and poor credential hygiene. So that's what we covered within the first part of this presentation, is just making sure that the credentials that you have inside of your environment meet an encryption standard or is complex enough that somebody wouldn't be able to easily guess it, like Friday the 13th, whoever was the funny guy in the in the audience who put that on there.
Steve, on this topic and on Neil's previous topic. So one thing I think I want to make sure resonates with the folks on this call, on this webinar, when you see the word misconfiguration,
Mhm.
that should sound like somebody did not, another way of saying it is somebody did not configure it right.
Yeah.
And it's that somebody word, right? That means that a human had to be involved in it. Either they set it up correctly or they didn't set it up correctly. So that's the going back to the initial point that I was trying to raise at the very start of this webinar, that the reason I have a passion area for awareness and making sure folks know and are trained, it's back to, the user, the person is now the firewall. Anything on this list can either be set up correctly or set up incorrectly by a human.
Absolutely.
So we are at the forefront of making sure that our systems and our technologies that we're using are secure. It's all up to us, right?
Indeed.
Now, granted, vendors play a big role in that. Like if they send us and ship us, their software and it's got issues and vulnerabilities all over the place, right? We'll have to rely on them to fix those things, but still it's humans on their end that are securing their software. So
Absolutely.
main point is it's us, it's humans that are at the forefront of all this.
And when you think about misconfigurations too, if you don't know how to properly change your oil, don't just jack your car up and get under there and start turning wrenches on things you don't know how to turn wrenches on. You know what I mean?
Yep.
That's when you
Yep.
rely on the people that you trust, whether it's a managed services provider or whether it's outsourced IT that you've trusted, vetted, and did third-party risk analysis on to be like,
You
okay,
got
I
it.
can trust you to do these things properly for me.
Yeah, and a lot of these things too. I mean, I get that some of our audience on the call here, it may be a foreign thing to them, but for some of you that maybe you're in technology, maybe it isn't a foreign thing. But at the end of the day, I think the message is, to your point, Steve, it's we all have expertise in some area. IT and technology may not be your area of expertise, so relying on the help of others, I think, is the key message here. But recognizing that we're actually, what we're kind of trying to do here is protect the human and train the human on how to manage all this stuff, right?
Absolutely.
Great, good stuff.
All right, so let's move into solid partnerships. We were literally just talking about that. So ensuring that your software vendors, if you are a business owner, or again, even if you deploy a software solution for yourself, just ensuring that you fully understand not only what their security policies are, but also is that an acceptable level of risk that you're willing to accept as well. Just because you offload your software as a service or your cloud computing to a third party does not inherently just make it safe. So I'll say that again, just because you are utilizing a software on the internet and you think that it's offloaded and it's on the cloud, that you're inherently good. There are things that you have to be responsible for as well to ensure that your data is protected. And that kind of moves right into supply chain. We can have Travis. You just participated in a manufacturing briefing or a presentation, rather. Just a few weeks ago, where when your raw materials go through your supply chain, and then your vendors get hit, or even your customer gets hit. Anywhere in that chain that it becomes weak is going to be, a cause for concern. So again, that's when you rely on your IT and your cybersecurity partners to shoulder that burden for you, and if and when that incident does happen, that you can respond appropriately. All right, so I think the last thing we're going to do here is, well, not last thing, it's going to be our last poll, is at what frequency do you perceive you are being targeted for a cybersecurity attack? So when I say you, we're talking personally. And granted, a lot of people, relate their personal life to their business life or what they do for a living. That's perfectly fine. So if those two are interchangeable, that's okay. But think if this question was asked just directly to you with a friend or a relative.
And we'll give everyone just a couple more seconds to get their answers in.
Sure thing.
Steve, is there an option that's higher than very high, or no? Just kidding. Happens
Depends.
every second, maybe. I don't know.
Yeah, every second.
Extremely very high.
Extremely very high. I like that.
Okay.
All
All
right,
right.
looks like I can see results here. So, all right, 0% for low probability won't happen to me. Moderate probability comes in at first at 41%. High probability and very high probability takes 35%. So what we're going to do here is, if we can go back to the slides, just keep your answer in mind, and we're just going to kind of run through what cybersecurity looks like personally, and how we like to use the analogy of cybersecurity is like securing your home. So let's take a quick walk through what securing the home looks like. So think about this as your computer, right? If we're looking at our home from the outside, our doors and windows are locked to prevent theft. We have cameras to ensure that if there is something nefarious going on, we can see it. We have motion detection lights, so if something does run by, whether it's a human or an animal, it'll turn on. We got trees to block those nosy neighbors and passerbys. And then we also have a fence that's locked just for an additional perimeter security. Now, if someone were to get through, and let's say they actually get inside the house, right? So what are we doing to protect ourselves? Well, we got Wi-Fi that is secured with industry standard encryption. So that's going to be inside and outside protection. You have an alarm system that's armed when you're at home or sleeping, because even when you're home, the alarm might go off, right? And only certain people have access to certain rooms, right? You don't want, children getting into rooms that they're not supposed to. Locks are tested and changed when necessary in the event that there was an incident that happened. The goods have further protections, such as keeping your weapons or maybe cash or money inside of a safe. And then to round it off, hopefully you and your family regularly meet around the table to discuss home safety and different scenarios that may happen with inside the home in the event that something would happen. So why do I show everybody this today? Well, because we must take cybersecurity seriously and personal. Because we do have a stark reality in front of us today. We use computers every day, and here's our reality. This is happening to your cyber house as we speak. And although the presentation is meant to, cybersecurity doesn't have to be scary, we know for a fact that cybersecurity professionals, if this were your physical house, things would change immediately. I know the audience can't speak, but I feel like there was a silence that just fell across the room. What we're trying to say is this is the world that we live in now, and we want to help make yours safer. You can go ahead and advance that slide there for me, Travis. So we're going to move into some resources that you can use, but I just like to paint that analogy as the home, because if we do take our cybersecurity as seriously as we take protecting our home, things would certainly change. So take that in mind and start to look at your organization and your personal cybersecurity as something that is personal, because again, these things are happening every single day.
That's great, Steve. And yeah, it doesn't have to be scary. That's why we went over some of the fundamentals and things to be mindful of, right? So we can implement those things to make it less scary, and it actually provides some pretty good security for ourselves. You should have access to the slides. Everybody in attendance should have access to the slides. So here's some resources if you want to connect with any of these to get some more information or dig in on your own pace. Just wanted to put this slide together so you have all these resources. The last item on there is feel free to reach out to any of us on in this presentation. Again, here we are, and our email addresses if we can be of any assistance to you. And the last one is just a big thank you for everybody that was able to participate. And Becky, I know we only have 3 minutes here, so I'm not sure if there are any questions that came in, but want to kick it over to you, either to maybe answer one or two of those, or move on to closing out the webinar.
We do have quite a few questions, so we'll answer a couple, but I want everyone to know that the guys will receive copies of these questions afterwards, and when we do the follow-up with the recording, we'll have the answers for the ones that weren't answered. So don't worry, though. We'll get everything answered for you. So to kick things off, how do you feel about face and fingerprint recognition on devices?
So
How do we feel about face and fingerprint on devices? Go ahead, Steve.
Yeah, I was going to say biometrics have come a long way in technology, and there have been numerous trials and tests that have been done to test that technology. I can say that biometrics started hitting the scene like almost 20, 30 years ago. So it has come a long way. Face recognition has some of gaps in the reporting of security fuzziness, I guess you could say, and that it actually works. There's been a lot of studies that have been done that you can, mold and shape, different things to help you gain access to the devices. But biometrics, I would say, are far more superior than facial recognition at this time. But as with anything, you can always poke holes in it. So that's my two piece.
Yeah, and then just on top of that too, the question there would be, well, it depends on what it is that you're looking to protect there. So fingerprint biometrics alone may not be adequate in some cases. So maybe that's a form of multi-factor where you'd still have your username and password, but then that third piece would be, something that you are, which would be your fingerprint in that case.
I was going to say that too, Neil. Yep. Good. Hopefully we address that question.
All right.
You want to sneak one more in there, Becky? What do you think? We got 1 minute.
Yes. Okay. Is it possible to have a system where I suspect intrusions are discovered in real time?
Is it possible to have a system where intrusions are
Discovered in real time?
Yeah, in fact, I'll take the lead on this one. Steve, Neil, please chime in. But quickly, a lot of the security technologies that are out there today they're not where they need to be, but they sure have gotten a lot smarter, and quite honestly, they're leveraging a bunch of user behavior analysis, machine learning, some of that artificial intelligence that we very briefly hit on earlier, to really highlight those things more real time. So that's, if you've ever heard of the phrase managed detection and response or endpoint detection and response, that's what those tools are intended to do. So they are out there on the marketplace, but they're getting smarter and smarter just over time as they learn new things going on in the environment, on the computer, in the network, whatever the case might be.
Perfect.
If that helps.
And if you have additional follow-up, just use the emails provided, Travis, and you can ask more additional. I do have one more question. So since we're right on the 1 o'clock hour, we'll get it done. But do you have any recommendations for guidance to use for internal control risk testing? Or
Yeah,
internal risk control testing. Sorry, I said that backwards.
I can take this one from the human element. So for whoever asked, know before, and that's spelled KNOWB and then the number 4. Wonderful company that provides a very comprehensive training to your employees and your staff for individuals who need the assistance and kind of like a backup for training. So I'd say utilize that resource to the highest extent. Travis, I don't know if you have anything to add to that.
Yeah, so that's one part of the internal control, and they do a good job with testing folks from a cybersecurity standpoint. I think maybe behind that question as well, if I read into it a little bit more, was potentially on like other internal controls within the business. I think first of all, making sure that they're defined is where you need to be. What are those internal controls? And then, I mean, folks like us or others helping you to make sure that they're adequate, and then helping you to understand how to actually test them for effectiveness. That's what you should be thinking about just with your entire kind of internal control environment as a whole. So again, I hopefully that was a good rounded answer there.
Yeah, and that can be spanned out and far-reaching too. So we could be talking about, looking at the controls around a particular system, whether it's privileged access management, user certification reviews, checking logs, all the way back to, depending on the type of work that's being performed, is your organization, are they providing a background check for employees as a control? as well there. So there's quite a bit in that space that can be reviewed.
Perfect. We did have one more instance, real quick. And then is logging off sufficient enough, or do we need to sign out and then shut down?
I can take the lead potentially, and I'm going to answer this question a little bit vague. So I'm going to say it depends, and when I say that, it's probably the situation at hand and which machine or computer you're doing it with. Like every day, all day, if you're using any kind of shared computer or kiosk or something like that, you need to completely sign out and log off and shut down if that's even a capability, just because you don't want obviously somebody to jump on that machine and leverage your credentials after that. So that's just on like my perspective on like shared computers. Yeah, making sure you're completely signed out of your account is the right approach there. And I might have missed if there was a two-parter for that one, Becky.
No, there wasn't.
Okay.
So,
All right.
like I said, if it didn't answer your question enough, just reach out to us, let us know, and we'll go in more depth. That is all our questions.
We can answer it proactively too. If you want to shoot that over to us, we'll get that out.
Yeah, no problem. Thank you guys. Thank you, Travis, Neil, and Steve. It was great information. Thank you to everyone that joined. Oh, she said a personal computer. She just chimed in.
Yeah, I was kind of running through that in my head. I had a feeling it was a personal computer. If you're in your home and you're not worried about your kids or your husband hacking into your information and stealing it, I would say that logging off is just fine if you're stepping away from it to go get some coffee. But with Travis's point, I think that's more so like if you're let's say you're a manufacturing business owner and then you have a computer that's running your automated manufacturing process. Yeah, that's a little bit different scenario. So it definitely depends, but for a personal computer, yeah, you're quite fine with just logging off, in my opinion.
Yeah, thanks for the question and follow up.
Yep.
All right. Thank you guys so much. Thank you for everyone joining us today. We said it multiple times, but these guys are really available if you ever have any questions. Look for a follow-up email from us soon. And I hope everyone has a great rest of your day, not too scary on this Friday the 13th.
Thanks, Becky.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everyone. Have a good day.